when we are discussing something, some of my team meetings actually, even today, look, we are actually arguing than actually having a meeting. Okay? But it's important for everybody, whether it's the junior most person or a senior most person, including myself on the team. We all have the equal voice because okay, we see things from our own lens and we have our own perspective about it. Okay? But it's my job as the coach, I would say that instead of CEO, as a coach or as a person that is actually facilitating that meeting, to make sure that we continue to focus on what is wrong than who is wrong.
Thank you so much for tuning into Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. I'm your host, as always, Christian D. Evans. And boy, we have someone special on today. He is the CEO of Vetty. Now, what is Vetty? Well, basically, they help humans hire humans. They go and do everything, and I'm talking international background checks, global watch list records, motor vehicle records, county criminal records, national criminal records, social security number, trace and address history, so much to unpack if you're hiring the right candidate for your company and for what you got going on, because you want to make sure, hey, if you're going to scale to that next level, you got to find the right people in the right spot on the right team. In order to do that, you have to make sure that you vet them correctly. And so I'm so excited about having him on. Now, I just want to share with you his background a little bit. Now, he is a member of executive management team that accomplished multiple successful exits for a leading private equity firm. We're going to be unpacking that story as well, which is really awesome. He built technology teams equipped to drive and sustain enterprise growth. He launched new cloud services and systems, built agile development teams, and introduced new business models to improve profitability and customer satisfaction. Please welcome the CEO of Vetty, my friend, Reddy Karri. How you doing today, Reddy?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks for the great intro. I appreciate that.
Man, I'm really excited about diving into your story because, you have been the chief technology officer for First Advantage. You have done so much, definitely in the software side of things. But I want to ask about your kind of specifically in the M&A world, okay? Because you have been in this area and you've done a lot of exits. You have worked with a lot of private equity. I want to ask, what were those most pivotal moments, the best learning experiences in your journey that had to really modify your own belief system or modify your own growth? What did that look like?
So like you mentioned, I started my career as a technology guy. Okay, I was a software developer and then grew into the management on the technology side, VP of engineering and chief technology officer. But I was fortunate enough to have great mentors. In fact, actually, one of my mentor, he has been my mentor for the last 27 years now. Okay, and I always go back to him and all the great minds in this world that helped me grow as not only as a leader but also a business acumen that I gained from them. Okay, and they saw the potential in me. And one of my mentors basically sat down with me and told me that, okay, why are you wasting your talent? It's only in technology. You will make a great people leader and a business leader, and you should focus on that one. And he's the one actually way back in 1996 introduced me to reading business books. Before that, I never read any nonfiction, honestly speaking, other than some biographies. And he was the one actually who introduced me to some great books. And today, probably I have a collection of more than 100 books. And I try to learn from other leaders. Okay? But that's somehow, I never got to really gotten into the MBA world. I didn't want to. And I learned through experiences from these leaders and different companies going through that. I started mapping that technology, the back end, to the business front end, if I may say so. Okay. And that helped me a lot. And then once I became a kind of a general manager leading a part of the business, I started putting things together that, okay, what drives the business? It's not just the technology, but also all the commercials associated with that. And the general management experience helped me a lot. That one of those mentors actually started a private equity group, and he invited me to be part of the operating executive management teams for one of his portfolio companies. That's how I gotten more into M&A. And even though I was involved in M&A as a technology guy, but there was more due diligence on the technology side, not from the business perspective. But I got exposed big time into not just the technology part of it, but the business part of it. And one part of it is the technology due diligence and the business due diligence, acquiring the right company. But I was also involved the follow-up actions that actually integrating those companies, whatever the companies that we acquired, into a single company and make the benefits that we anticipated during the due diligence process realized. And that gave me a experience on both ends, right? Acquiring the companies part of it, right companies, I would say, from both technology perspective, culture perspective, and the business perspective, and making sure that whatever the plan that we had or the benefits that we expected from those mergers, and realize them and execute that whole integration plan. And on both sides of the equation, I was equally given a chance to basically execute that.
So I really appreciate you mentioning the power of mentorship in your own life, and how that mentor was the one that said, Reddy, you're capable of more. And you obviously, embraced that. And I found that very interesting. So you came from software and then got into this investment banking world, like private equity world, like M&A. And it's like, you're really not familiar. You came from the software background side of things, the technology. So I'm curious, that evolution, I would imagine there was a massive learning curve. What did that look like? And let me ask you in regards to also, what did that look like, that journey, but also how did you optimize that relationship and still do with that mentor?
So obviously, I answer the second question first. Okay, and the leveraging the relationship is that that particular mentor was that he was, I would say, he was a born mentor. Okay, and I have seen him for the last 27 years. Like I said, he was one of my customers before he became my boss. Okay, and there was a funny story that we were a $10 million company. When I was VP of engineering for a $10 million software company. And this company was the largest semiconductor company that he was the CIO. They gave us a business for $24 million. They signed a contract for $24 million. That is like twice our revenue, more than 2.5x our previous annual revenue. And there was a piece of software that we had to develop to satisfy their needs. And his worry was that this whole company that I was working for will take the entire company to build the software for $24 million. Obviously, there is a professional services component, but at least a major part of that. He was really worried. And we delivered the product, and we, within record time of about 8 to 10 months. And at the end of the 10 months, he came to know that my team developed the product with just 4 people on my team. And he was very impressed. That's how basically we started developing that relationship. And he came in and became COO of the company that I was working for. And eventually he became CEO. But that he took me under his wings to help me grow. Okay. And even today, basically, I meet with him, and he actually spends his entire Saturday from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. meeting with each one of his mentees for an hour. Okay? And he does that religiously, even though he's retired right now, but he still meets with a lot of those people and help them actually grow. One of the things that really helped me, and he gave me the template how to make the mentee-mentor relationship really work, is he always asked me to come to me with a case study. Basically, okay, you problem that you are having, and come to me and tell me how you are planning to solve it, and then I can actually guide you in the right direction. So I always went to my sessions every Saturday religiously, that one specific problem that I want to address in my business and how we want to do it. And he actually gave me the specific advices that, okay, that's what else I could have done based on his experience. And that helped me a lot to learning. Okay. And he also gave me one critical advice, and I always take that advice to my heart, and I give that advice back to my team members. The good leaders always learn from their own experience and their mistakes, but great leaders learn from others' mistakes. So that's it. Always I look for that. Okay, when I get advice from somebody, or when I read a book, or when I took some of these great leaders, not only what I can learn from them, but what I do not want to do or what they have done. Always apply their knowledge to my situation and look at that and see how I can leverage that and how I do not make those mistakes. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you on that point. I'm curious because I've heard this before, and I love that approach 100%. So with you, how do you analyze that? Is there like something on your top of mind, like in your life, Reddy, that you're like, okay, hey, I want to work on maybe, getting buy-in for my people. And so, okay, I'm going to look at other leaders that were really good at that, and then analyze what they did and learn from their experience, learn from their failures, et cetera, and then start implementing it throughout, like, for Vetty, for example. Is that your approach? Help me understand, like, what's your strategy or how you go about doing that?
Yeah, so let's look at the specific example that you asked me. That, okay, if I want to get buy-in from somebody, okay, most of the leaders or most of the successful leaders always get the results at the end of the day. Okay, but in that process, either they carry the people with them or leave the dead bodies all over the world, all over the place, and then basically, okay, go and actually achieve the results. They move on, but that, okay, the people don't follow them. Okay. That's you can see that again and again and again, that, okay, there are successful leaders that achieve the outcomes, and then you see multiple CEOs that actually, okay, come in, they still get their financial objectives, but they are not really putting in a long-term structure in place or the system in place that can sustain that growth even after they leave. Okay? And I see many times where the successful CEOs leave the company and the company actually goes bust and they come back as a CEO. But they're actually, okay, that I see that there's their failure than their success. Actually, okay, because the successful CEO or the successful leader is, when he leaves or she leaves, the system continues and they continue to be successful. Yeah? And that's the mantra that I have followed, that, okay, that's, and one of the things that, if somebody asks me what is your greatest success, I always rattle down that, okay, hey, 5 of the people that actually reported into me now, VPs of engineering somewhere, are, they say 10 of them are chief technology officer, or 2 of them are CEOs. That's what I believe in, basically, that, okay, developing the leaders around me, and that makes me look good and makes me successful. Actually, okay, it makes my day much more easier, because I always have the capable leaders and make sure that they are actually developed into the leaders, and I'm not afraid of. And this is, again, one of my mentors said, okay, he came from army, and in military, that if somebody else asks you that, okay, hey, do you have anybody that can take up this job for me? You always give up your best person from your team, because there's 2 things that you are achieving. One, you are setting example for everybody else that the best people always grow, either within my organization or outside that organization. And number 2, if you give away the lowest performing person on your team, the best people will leave your team because they're, okay, their growth is kind of limited. And I'm never afraid of basically that, okay, that's telling the people that you go and do this because that, okay, you have outgrown my sphere of influence, and then you can actually achieve much more on your own. And I always support them. I always support them within the organization or outside the organization, because you cannot limit a person's growth because she or he is ready to take another job or another role, another responsibility. You should always make it happen. That's how that basically they grow, and you will always have pleasure to work with them later.
So let's talk a little bit about this. And I'm so glad we brought this up because Reddy, you and we talked about this offline and, talking about, the C-suite or your leaders or your mid-tier or top tier leaders, right? Whatever that may be. And with that, there is diversity, where diversity of thought, diversity of backgrounds, and that's good for the company. We've heard that. However, though, I want to ask, because Reddy, you've been able to do some incredible stuff with your results and your exits and your growth and everything like that. And so you've built incredible teams, right? Like you mentioned, in order to achieve the high levels, it takes a team of people. What is your way of analyzing each player on your team? And let me ask you this in a more micro level. Do you identify their weaks and their strengths and say, okay, you know what? Because of their strengths, I know I'm going to give them this project and they're going to work with these people because I know that's a dream team. However, though, sometimes I'm also a big believer in developing their weaknesses, even though that may not be the best and they shouldn't be focusing 90% of their time on developing their weaknesses, but they should always be adjusting and optimizing that side as well. So I'm curious, do you give them certain projects to help them facilitate almost failure in their weaknesses, but it's a good experience for the growth and their learning?
Yeah. So one of the mantra almost everybody tells you in the technology world is that, okay, if you are going to fail, fail fast. Okay. And failing faster is basically helps you retrace your steps and start all over again. Because, okay, the longer you waste, the longer basically it takes. Okay. And also, I'm a big believer that I agree with you that somebody needs to improve their weaknesses. Okay, or I won't call them weaknesses, that the areas of improvement. But it's always, it takes a lot more effort from somebody to improve their areas of improvement, whereas it's easier to improve their strengths, I would say. Okay, and again, that's but the simple analogy that I give everybody is that the water still stays that it's warm, but at 99 degrees, but then okay, once it's hit 100, it starts boiling. That's 1 degree of effort will differentiate you from a performer to a super performer or star to a superstar. Okay, and that's very, very important to realize what is that 1% change or the 1 degree change to make that person becoming from a star to superstar. That gives you the number or highest in terms of returns compared to somebody's weakness, converting that into a good performer. So I always focus on people's strengths. Obviously, there are areas of weaknesses that we talk about, but when it comes to areas of weaknesses, I focus on two things. One, your skill-related weaknesses and your personality-related weaknesses. Okay, skill-related weaknesses can be improved. Skills can be learned. Okay, you are not born with basically how you walk. It is taught to you. Okay, and how you run, or how you run right way, basically without having pain in your body and all that stuff. Okay, but swimming or cycling, all those are skills that you learn. Okay, but personality is personality. Okay? You're born with that personality. And it's hard for you to change a lot. There are people that change. I'm not saying they don't, but you're suppressing that your dominant personality to become somebody else. Okay, and obviously the team culture and working with other people, all those things come into picture. You need to pick the right kind of people for the team, and also it's important for you to understand that what kind of task that you are trying to achieve to make them. Again, I give a lot of analogies to my team members that, okay, keep it simple. Okay, you cannot take a great farmer from South that grows cotton and basically, okay, take him to New York or the Northeast, and he cannot produce the similar kind of yield. Okay, the environment or the land, that's the fertile environment in your team matters a lot. Okay, that's one of the things that again, I learned in one of the scenarios where we always, with the same the $10 million company that I was talking to, which grew to $1 billion in 5 years. Okay, but when we were changing something, that we actually used to hire developers only. Our CEO at that point of time had a very strong conviction that we should only hire developers that are married and stable in their life, because they're okay, they will be stable and they will produce more. Okay, but then came the dot-com boom. Okay, and for dot-com, for internet, we had to hire different people. I went to him and convinced him that, okay, hey, we need to hire a different kind of set of people. First of all, the existing developers don't know what is internet. Okay, and number two, it requires a different kind of skills, different kind of personality, and we don't know our users at that point of time, because okay, that's an emerging field, and the young generation is the actual users of the internet at that point of time, and a lot of the user experience that we are talking about, we cannot fathom at that point. I was like 32, 33, whatever it was. Okay, and then we went outside and actually hired all fresh graduates. I built a team of 30 people with fresh graduates and built some of the what we call B2B exchanges today. And I'm very proud of the fact that it was year 2000, 1999 to 2000, 2001. 7 out of the 8 B2B exchanges that we built in those days, they're still in existence in some form or the other. That's basically okay. That's the kind of okay. At that point, the need of the hour is a different kind of mindset, different kind of people, and we needed that the vibe in the team and the upbeat. Not somebody comes to work at 8 o'clock in the morning and leaves at 5 o'clock. Okay, that's we needed. I wanted people that hung around after the work. They go for a happy hour and we played soccer games together on Wednesday evening. So many other things that we did, but they were all fresh graduates coming in, and they brought in their perspective to what should be on the internet. So that's it matters a lot when it comes to hiring the right people for the task. It's a cliched example. Everybody says that okay, you cannot have 11 quarterbacks on the team and then basically win the football game. It's the same thing, basically. Okay, that's we need everybody for that every position role that we are doing. But the most important thing is that those guys gel together as a team.
See, and you're exactly right. To scale to $1 billion business, like you mentioned, you have to build that team. However, though, I want to bring this up because I think it's important. Because when you're working with A players, right, top level, individuals, right, they are all leaders within their own selves, right, their own right, and there is this disagreement, like I mentioned, right, and so as as the CEO, as a founder, you have to facilitate the proper disagreement. But then also when the QB, in that analogy, when the QB calls a play, everybody has to align and say, okay, hey, we are going with this play. And I'm curious, Reddy, with your experience, because we talked about this offline, I want to bring this up because I thought it was a cool conversation. How do you facilitate that, where not only facilitate proper disagreement and healthy debate and healthy conversation, but also at the end of the day, when you make a decision as the CEO of Vetty, you're able to say, hey, you know what? We're all going this way. And everybody's able to realign and regather and say, okay, this is the play, we're going. What does that look like?
Yeah, so that's one key thing that helped me in the past and even still today is that when we have disagreements, or it's like you said that in the right way, basically, that okay, that's everybody in their own right as a leader and have their own mindset, and we need to make sure that we foster that environment in the team. Okay, and when we have a team meeting or when we are discussing something, some of my team meetings actually, even today, look, we are actually arguing than actually having a meeting. Okay, but it's important for everybody, whether it's the junior most person or a senior most person, including myself on the team. We all have the equal voice because okay, we see things from our own lens and we have our own perspective about it. Okay, but it's my job as the coach, I would say that instead of CEO, as a coach or as a person that is actually facilitating that meeting, to make sure that we continue to focus on what is wrong than who is wrong. And because it's, when it comes to a disagreement or argument, it always becomes like, okay, hey, you're wrong. And if somebody says you're wrong, I need to pull them back and saying that, okay, he's not wrong, but basically that, okay, what he's saying is wrong, and what he's saying, you disagree with that one, that what he's saying will get you to the end result. We are all working towards the end result. Let's talk about what is wrong, then who is wrong. Okay? That kind of basically, okay, it's over a period of time. Obviously, that, okay, it takes time for people to get into that more kind of a culture. That's the culture I foster in my among my team members, and we all know that every person in the team has equal right to state their opinion. But once we agree on something, this is the execution plan, and it's like, okay, all the plays are designed during the practice, and they practice on the practice field. But once you go into the field, onto the field during the game time, QB actually calls the play based on everything that he sees, that, okay, how the setup is and everything, and he plays that call, he calls that play, and they execute the play. Everybody needs to fall in line to make sure that, okay, that's a wide receiver needs to run their routes, and that everybody has to be in their own place, make sure that the play is executed to the perfection. That's what makes it.
And I love that. I love how you just played that out, explained that a little bit, because like you said, it's not like that person's wrong. It's saying, hey, that idea, it may be inaccurate. And so maybe we evolve, we transform that a little bit, right? And I love that approach. I think that needs to definitely be applied in politics right now. So I appreciate you saying that. But Reddy, let me ask you this also. When you said skill and personality, I want to ask you about your journey with your skills, right? Because obviously you've had to develop yourself, and you obviously had to analyze that, and you had your own failures and experiences. What were, what's your strongest skill that you feel like you are very, very like, I got this dialed in, and I've worked tremendously hard to work this one skill that you're proud of about your personality, or just kind of what you've been able to do, and then a skill that you had to really work on. It's one of the weaker points, and maybe you had to delegate responsibility to help you facilitate that. One of the things for me is empathy. I struggle. I'm one of those people that just drive through people, and I had to become aware of that. It's a good and bad thing, and so empathy. I had to show a little bit of empathy when I'm dealing with a lot of my team members, etc. And someone told me that in a bad situation, but it was good. It was a good learning experience. But I want to go ahead and allow you to just share what you had to go through.
Yeah, I think that's, you hit the nail on the head, actually. Okay, that was one of my problems as well. That, okay, that's showing that empathy part of it. But I'm a data person. I'm not a feelings person, basically. Okay, I'm a data person, and if you do my disc profile or the personality analysis, it comes very strongly saying that, okay, hey, you're a data person. And I'm also, by training, I am a engineer, obviously, that, okay, very analytical, and I analyze and approach everything by logic. Okay? And many times that's right, because, okay, the first 10 years of my career, I always shied away from taking people responsibility. In fact, actually twice in my career, they promoted me to be a manager of the team. And then after a year, basically, I said that, okay, this is not, I don't like this, basically dealing with these people. I want to go back and become an individual contributor or the technical architect, what are things, okay? Till that my mentor actually sat me down and saying, okay, hey, look at this. These are 1, 2, 3 scenarios, how you approach that. So it is not that you are not, you are actually, okay, want to be a logical person, but that's your analysis. When I ask you about your team members, anything, you give a very analytical, black and white kind of an answer, what they can do, what they cannot do. And then it's never against them, but that's, you are actually trying to put them in the right, like good to great, basically, okay, get all the people on the bus and put them in the right seat, okay? And he mentioned to me that you're able to do that. Why are you shying away from that responsibility? Okay, and then he challenged me that they grow up as a leader. Okay, and that's when I started looking at. So once I started looking at through empathy lens, okay, I see that there is a feedback. There are people take that feedback in different ways. Okay, for a person who's feelings person, that's giving that feedback is in a different way, whereas a logical person giving them, or the data person giving them in a logical way, that, okay, hey, logically you're wrong. This is a mistake you made, and we could have made this. So it makes a huge difference. That's a skill I learned, how to deal with each individual are a unique individual. Every individual is unique. It's not that one glove fits all kind of solution ever works for with people. Okay? And if you want to get best out of the people, basically, okay, you need to do different way. You need to deal with them different way to bring them together as a team, but also each individual performing at the peak level. Okay? I follow Phil Jackson. He's the great coach that's for Bulls and Lakers, and the way he deals with his team members. Okay, he dealt with very, very professional, like Michael Jordan, or they come to the practice at the beginning of before everyone else and leaves the practice after everyone else. But he equally able to deal with Dennis Rodman, and a rebel in his own way, but that he didn't use the same techniques for both the people. He used different techniques. And in fact, actually, probably at the beginning of his career, that okay, Jordan was highly looked at as not a team player. Okay, and converting that superstar, that's where that 1 degree separation that I was talking about. That Jordan was at 99 degrees, and then making him to cross that 1 degree and making it as a water boiling with a lot of energy, and creating that energy is what Phil Jackson was successfully able to do it. Before him, 3 coaches were not able to do it. Okay? As a leader, that's the biggest skill or the best skill that I have learned over a period of time. It didn't come to me like a light switch, flipping it on and off. It took me a while to get there, but obviously, okay, that's mentors will always help, and discussing that with your mentors and these kind of scenarios will really help you grow as a leader.
You're saying some really good stuff, and I appreciate you bringing this up because I find this so interesting. And the reason why is because it's leadership is an art and a science, right? You can read something, but then you as the leader, when you're in that situation, you have to have the discernment, know when to deploy, more of that empathy or that logical or like being a little bit assertive. Because like your mentor, right, coming back to that situation, he told you and said, "Reddy, you're a lot smarter than this. You can do so much more." And unless he fed that into you, planted that seed, do you think you would have been able to do and maybe believe that and start realizing that your own self actualization, if you will? And I'm the same thing with a lot of yourself with a lot of your team members, right? Sometimes there are points, and I'd love to get your perspective on this. There are points where you have to say, "Hey, Jim, you're not performing to what you're capable of doing, and I'm kind of disappointed," right? And that's okay, right? Say that because an A player will raise to the expectation.
Absolutely.
And some, though, if you say it when they're kind of in their downtrodden, it's not the best time to say it, right? So you got to have the discernment. So I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about that, and how do you identify what that environment is and how to make that right discernment?
So I think that's with the best people to get to that 1 degree separation that I was talking about. That's probably easier because they want to be, basically they're ultra competitive, and then they really want to be successful, and they want to be the best at what they do. Okay, and obviously that okay, the methods they're using to get there is not getting them there, and then somebody coming in and basically looking at it and telling them that okay, hey, this is what probably you should try, and giving that feedback in a way that definitely helps. Okay, but the people that are struggling and giving them that feedback and doing that, that's where I believe that empathy plays a bigger role than actually giving them the data. Okay? And many times the people are struggling, like I said, because of the skill, and it's a training issue, and basically okay, giving them an opportunity to learn that new skill or practice this new skill is always helps them. But also they may be going through some personal issues, okay, and knowing them intimately, that okay, I get to know my employees a lot and their families a lot, okay, and one of the things that I successfully employed in my career, and I always tell my leaders to do the same thing, is if your employee is working, okay, like 12 hours a day or 16 hours a day due to a project or whatever, okay, I mean, he always gets that appreciation face to face and among the team members. Okay, you can always reward them with monetary benefit, or with a promotion, whatever it was, okay, we can do that. We can reward him or her directly, but the family back at the house are the ones that are actually suffering. I always picked up the phone and called the wife or the spouse, basically, that, okay, hey, telling her or him that how well the employee is doing and how much do we appreciate that. And in fact, I have overseas employees that, okay, I have teams in almost 8 different countries. And for the people that are not married, I actually picked up the phone, or when I visited that country, I made it a point to meet the parents, invite them for a dinner, and actually sit down with them and tell them, okay, hey, how well your child is doing or your son is doing. And that makes them proud. And that actually supports the employee a lot back at home, okay? Whatever that they need to give 100% here in the work, or 100% or 200%. That's taking that burden away from that employee, and you as his or her leader taking that responsibility and making sure that you are actually communicating that way. It actually helps a lot. And I have written personal letters. Actually, I have written a letter to some of the spouses saying that, okay, hey, how well they're doing, or send them flowers saying that, okay, hey, I know that you are the one that actually suffering, and then we show our appreciation. So that helps a lot. That helps. That falls into empathy, and that's a skill, like you said, I learned over a period of time.
And I appreciate you bringing that up. That's something that you developed, and you found it becoming so intuitive, but also very, very powerful when you're working with those. Now, I'm curious because obviously you've been able to scale very large companies, and you get to a point where your teams they become second and third kind of tiered individuals, right? It's at top tier, and so you don't know everybody on your team basically, and your employee, right? You may hire someone like I don't even know they were even hired on your team, right? Because it's so big and a mammoth. So the question comes down to, because of that intentionality that you brought into it, how do you integrate that into the DNA of the company or the culture of the company?
Yeah. So 2 things. One, obviously, the leaders that you are developing, and they understand that culture part of it. That's where basically you are developing that culture and making sure that your leaders and their next level leaders always actually implementing that or carrying that culture throughout the organization. That's very important for me. And number 2, the biggest challenge when you are growing as a leader from the scale of the organization perspective, okay, I've been an individual contributor in my life, and I have led an organization of about 3,500 people, okay, and all over the globe, like I said, okay. And one of the things that like I said, the challenge that a leader faces is that as he or she grows in their career, is their ability to communicate their thoughts to the rest of the organization. Okay? When you are leading a team of 5 people, you can actually walk around and tap on the shoulder of somebody who has done a great job, okay? And which you cannot do when you have 5,000 people. Okay? And so there are different, that communication, or communicating your thoughts and openly sharing where you want to take this organization, what you want to do, what is the kind of culture that you want to set, is that communication part of it is very important. And I'll say that when you're scaling an organization, that's the biggest challenge. Everything else is kind of a skill. Yeah, looking at the balance sheets or looking at the P&L and looking at the numbers don't lie. Basically, okay, if you look at some problem with the number, that you can drill down into that number and see where the problem is. But if there is, out of the 5,000 people, there is a 10 people team is having challenge, and you don't know that will slowly fester into a much bigger problem, and you won't know it till it becomes a much larger challenge. Okay. One of the things that I always did in my career is that as I grew as a leader, is coming up with different mechanisms of communication. Okay? And one thing I made it a mandatory thing for me was that I will be in front of those employees face to face, okay, at least once a quarter. That's the key thing, okay. And there is always a monthly newsletter that you can send out to all the employees, everything, and helping them transparently communicating what's happening with the organization. I'm a big believer in transparency. I share, even when we were a private company, I always shared our finances with the rest of the team. And so that they know. So because it's important for an individual developer that's at the lowest level to know that whatever he has done, how it translated into revenue for the company. And mapping that connection between those two is the most important thing I was able to do. And once the people realize that, okay, oh, this is actually the impact of that, because that for the developer at that level, he has no idea that the code that he has written or bug he has fixed that helped us retain a customer that actually still giving us like, okay, $1 million business. Okay, that helps a lot. So I made sure that I met them in person. Okay, but every individual I cannot meet. It has to be a group meeting. So I had my what I call the meeting rhythm. That okay, of course direct reports we always meet on almost on a daily basis. They have direct access to me, but at least one level below, I always made sure that okay, I'm at least have a phone call, or I dedicate 30 minutes for my second level leaders to contact me, and it's on my calendar every day or every week. And whether it is 10, 15, whatever it is that okay, they talk to me. And then we have every place that I visit, at least that if there are not more than 100 people in that meeting, I always met with them in person. That's we called it floor walks, and basically okay, I go in front of them and explain them so that at least once a quarter they get to know what's happening in the company. Okay, and in addition to every new person that joined in the organization, actually I met them as a coffee with Reddy or tea with Reddy, whatever you want to call it, okay, or breakfast with Reddy. I wanted to get their ideas why they joined the company, and also important for them to hear that okay, what's important for us as a company, and communicating that transparently. It actually okay, that gives them the purpose of why they are doing what they are doing. I think that's the key mantra. If I ever tell anyone that okay, just tell your employees why they are doing what they are doing, they come up with much better answers or the ways to do. How part of it is they know how to do it. Okay, it is the why that is important, and why what they are doing and how it impacts the company at the highest level. And let's say this one mentor that I was talking to you earlier, he gave me a great advice in one of the mentorship meetings. I was bitching about my team that okay, this person doesn't do that, that person doesn't do that, they never deliver on the time and everything else. We were having a beer in the evening, and then he pointed me at the beer bottle and then told me that okay, Reddy, the bottleneck is always at the top. Okay, so that's basically you are the constraint. Basically, that okay, in an organization you are always the constraint, because in an organization the most of the information is at the top and most of the constraints are at the bottom. Unless you marry those two to understand what are the constraints to get and mapping it with the information that you have as a leader, you won't be successful and organization won't be successful. And that's the reason I kind of practice the transparency part of it. I share every piece of information that I have with everybody in the team so that they come up with much better solutions. I'm not the best person in the team. I know that.
Man, I really appreciate for what you just said for the last few minutes. I've want all my audience to re-listen to what you just said, because you were just bringing out so much gold nuggets and just so many things that were so intentional. Because it's so interesting, because so many individuals, and I've a lot of our audience are their top line $3, $4, $5 million business owners looking to scale to 8, 9 naturally. And so we always think, oh, we're going to be intentional when we get a bigger team, right? But the reality is you start integrating to these systems, which you just mentioned, and being transparent and making sure that your second tier leadership and the third tier leadership and your first tier, you guys all are connecting and you're very intentional. I just love what you said there, Reddy. And really people correct me if I'm wrong, you duplicate not what you say, but you duplicate what you do, right? And so
Yeah,
you going out
exactly.
there, being intentional, writing these letters, knowing the family members as much as you can, even with a large organization like you mentioned, 3,000 some plus employees, international. It's very difficult, but yet you did because you became very intentional with what you had. Reddy, I really appreciate you just being on here. I do want to talk a little bit about your company, Vetty. So if you could just tell us a little bit about the company for those that want to be part of it, learn a little bit more, integrate this, the power of it, why they need this in their operations.
Yeah. So simple thing is that everybody hires an employee today. And in today's environment, it is even difficult or find an employee, and then you see the shortage all over the place. And the demand, there is a huge imbalance between demand and supply. Okay. So Vetty is an hiring acceleration platform. So if you look at when you are hiring an employee, there are two distinct phases when you are hiring an employee. Okay. The first phase is sourcing the candidates, interviewing the candidates, and selecting the candidates. And then once you make the offer, till the employee joins your organization. Okay, that's what we call offer to active. Okay? And Vetty is the hiring acceleration platform that makes it faster for you to basically get the employee once you make an offer to basically till he or she joins the company, and condense that time frame to shortest possible to get them onboarded. Okay? That includes biggest or the longest pole in the tent is the background verification. Everybody, almost all key employees that you will end up doing the background checks. And the background checks could be varied from, if you're hiring a driver, it could be driver records and the criminal records, or if you're hiring a doctor, basically, or you're employing a doctor or a medical professional, you need to make sure that they are credentialed and they have license to work in that particular state, and they are actually keeping up with their education and the trainings and everything else to keep the license current. And in addition to that, all the criminal checks. And if you're a medical professional, you also need to go for your drug test and then basically vaccinations and all that stuff. Okay, it takes time. And in today's environment, most of the time, employee is your revenue when it comes to the employer. Okay, let's take an example of one of our large customer is a pet walking. Basically, okay, they bring in pet walkers or the pet caregivers to the pet owners. It's a platform. Okay, and they bring them together. And but that's when you are hiring a pet caregiver. Okay, and if there is a demand for that, and if you don't have enough pet caregivers, or there is an order, if there is nobody to babysit that pet, neither the company making money nor the babysitter or the pet sitter is making money. Okay, so it's a revenue lost. Okay, and that's where we come in picture when we compete with. The biggest difference between us and our competition is that the time it takes for us to fulfill those, from making sure that offer to active time is condensed. Okay, our competition typically takes about 2 to 3 weeks, and we are done in days. Okay, the same pet caregiver that I was talking about, they used to take 5 days to hire that employee, complete the background check and everything else, bring them on board. And today we do it under a day. Yeah. And that's including everything. Also, just there are a lot of background check companies, by the way. We do more than background check. That's why we call ourselves a hiring acceleration platform. Background check is one part of it. Okay? There are a lot of other things that we do, from offer to active. So if I have to just simple analogy, if I think that you are old enough, basically, okay, you will know. My daughters won't know that, okay, we lived in this kind of a world at some point of time. As just 20 years back, okay, in early 2000s, if you are making a trip, you are actually, okay, you need to take your pictures, basically, take a digital camera or the regular camera, okay. You need to either take a Garmin or TomTom, the GPS, or basically, okay, get a AAA trip sheets, okay, And if you want to listen to your music, basically, okay, either get a 20 CDs or 30 CDs for a 10-hour trip, basically, okay, let's put them in there. If you're, unless you're listening to a radio station, okay, all those things. And then came the smartphone and integrated all of those things in one device. And then you take your iPhone or Android phone, whatever it is, okay, let's take, it does everything for you. You don't require any of those things today. Okay, you can carry your entire music album on your phone, and yeah, it's, and your GPS on that one. You can put up your maps and basically go, and you can take pictures with that one. You don't have to, and you share it with your friends. Okay, so that's what Vetty is about. From offer to active, we are one-stop shop that helps customers hire faster, and in the process, basically complete all the background checks in on one platform, whereas our competition basically do pieces of it. They don't do everything. Some of them do driver checks, some of them do criminal, some of them do drug, but they don't do everything. And that's what our customers love in us. And the business has been growing, thank God. But it's a great place to help the customers and building something that's really revolutionizing in the market at this point in time.
Well, 100%, man. That's a great analogy with the phone, right? Because before we had like 1,200, 1,500 different things that we had to use, and now it's all in one. And so now it becomes very streamlined. And for those that are listening, they understand that analogy. And that's exactly what Vetty does. Because again, I think I've seen some people internally where they work with this company to do background checks. They work this to verify their, their education, whatever. And they did this over here for their employment verification. And they had so many different things, and they had to all bring it into one, kind of one blueprint. Like, okay, hey, let's verify this. But now what you're saying is you're able to just bring all that into one, very simply, be able to collapse that time frame very quickly, because it's, like you mentioned, the onboarding, it's very, very important to get someone definitely with the right hire integrated into your company to help you scale that next level with what we just talked about, a little bit about leadership and the founding and so forth. Man, I really appreciate this conversation and just unpacking your skills, what you've been able to do for our audience. And for those that want to reach out to you, maybe be part of what you got going on, learn a little bit more, how do they reach out to you or, to Vetty? Because it's vetty.co, correct?
Vetty.co. And it's .com, it's vetty.co. And they can, even Vetty.com actually redirects them to that website. Okay. And also they can reach me directly at reddy@vetty.co, reddy@vetty.co.
Awesome, guys. And those links will be in the description. And Reddy, I really appreciate you making yourself so much available where you're putting your email there. That's awesome. So I'll put your email down there as well. I'll put his LinkedIn as well, because he's very active on LinkedIn to some extent. Now, I want to ask you, Reddy, I always love to ask my guest, before I let you go fully, I always love to ask, what's the last words of wisdom? But I want to kind of adjust this. What were last words of wisdom that you learned from your mentor that were very, very impactful for your journey?
I think you trust your people and they make you successful. That's probably the one thing that I'll tell you, that, okay, I know that I'm not the best and the smartest person in my team. Okay, there are lots of them. Every one of us bring our own unique skills. But okay, they're always interchangeable. But they're okay. A quarterback cannot be a running back or a defensive back, all the stuff. But they're okay. Everybody have their own skills, and you bring to the table. But it requires the 11 players to make the team. That's we need to understand, and then everyone require that. But trusting those people in those roles will actually make you successful rather than second guessing them. Okay, and of course they need a guidance, obviously, because okay, that's where the gray hair in my on my head basically gives me that experience that I have been through that. The mantra I told you, learning from other mistakes. That everybody that's coming in, the fresh graduate coming into my team, and learn a lot from the mistakes that I have made, and I'm openly share those mistakes with them. Okay, but that's at the end of the day, trusting that person's ability to, the running back's ability to basically run all the 90 ads to get to the end goal, or when you're punting the ball at the last play of the game, and if it's a 50-yard field goal, trusting that person to basically make that field goal gives them the confidence and they believe that actually they're okay in the system, and that's what makes you successful.
Man, such massive, powerful wisdom. Guys, that is the CEO of Vetty.co, my friend Reddy Karri. Guys, that is Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. Until next time, be uncommon if you can.